7's video log, slightly different the way I felt in this week to what the other weeks have been. Still really good. Say the results were still good at the end of the week. So just to kind of go over what happened, I recently, people will know from Snapchat, I was explaining I was crunching down and clenching on my teeth, at my back teeth, which has knocked my jaw out of alignment, which is not good. So I was doing it when I sleep, when I drive, and especially when I train, I was crunching down on my teeth, which gave me some really bad pain in my jaw. And so I wasn't able to kind of lift as heavy as I wanted, or as heavy as I did the week before. So the volume, I had to tweak the training slightly so the volume was the same, because I wasn't able to lift heavier, so I had to take my reps higher slightly on some other exercises, but still made it work. It was still a really, really good week, but I had to try and not let it affect me. And this is the thing, what I was going on about during the week, and trying to explain that my motivation was still there. I didn't let it affect me, as though, although it was a struggle, it was hard, I had to keep everything on point. Nutrition was still really, really good throughout the week, and that has obviously helped with the results for the end of week 7. And I just I didn't want it to affect me, and quite often, if certain things like that, it can really put a downer on things, and you can slip back. But there are ways around these things. It doesn't have to affect it in that kind of way.
Yeah, I think it's good that you obviously knew this was going to be an issue, but it's quite easy to just go, oh no, that's it now, that's everything gone. Where it's not really. I know it's quite a serious thing to have with your jaw, but you found a way around it, and we can always tweak things, like you say, with the volume in the training, as long as we're still getting the same volume in.
Exactly, and that's what I knew at the beginning, that it needed to be matched.
Yeah, as long as the volume's matched. At this point in the training, the weight's really, I say, irrelevant. It's kind of not as important. I'd rather you just hit the volume, especially with this last final week that you're going into now. The idea behind it, in terms of the volume, was to obviously see how you react to it, but also rather than throwing in like some sprints or some extra cardio, which we don't really need, I can just tweak it through the training. So and it's working. So that's a good thing. Yeah, it is. It
was a really good week. I didn't write it off as being a bad week. It was a slight setback in the way I felt about the week, but it didn't mean I had to stop training. I had 1 day rest after weight training. Managed to get myself, a mouth guard, which compressed my mouth, which I was able to grit down on the next few sessions. So, I worked around it. And still hit the volume exactly the same as what it was the week before. I just had to calculate that slightly, but it was no issue. And what the bigger thing was to keep the food on point, which has helped go the rest of the week.
Just touching on that, did you have to change anything with the food? Did you had to try and tweak some stuff?
Yeah, so I did actually.
But only because of the eating.
Yeah, I couldn't crunch down on my back teeth, so anything tough, like I had turkey breasts in the evening, which I wasn't able to chew properly. So for a couple of days I did change that to turkey mince, which made no difference really. It's the same food. And also I made sure that in the mornings I was chopping up my chicken really in small pieces, so it was just easier to chew. At the end of the day, it made no difference whatsoever to the macros. The calories were all the same. Just worked with it.
Old school way, and blend
it all up in a drink.
Drink it. No, don't do that.
I'll do that. But no, as I say, the macros, the calories were all exactly the same. Just had to tweak it slightly, but it worked.
Yeah. So in terms of your weight for this week, it's dropped again.
It dropped again. So what was it? 71.8 and 71.3 this morning.
Okay.
So this is into week 8.
Even into
the back end of week 7.
Back in the last part of last week, we dropped again. again, with no real change in anything in terms of food, it's the same. It's just the increase slightly in volume and training. And again, it's already dropped again this week. So yeah, with real minimal changes, it's just putting that extra little tiny tweaks in the training. I know this week's pretty tough, but I think you're enjoying it so far.
Yeah, it's really good. Last week's training was like seriously tough. I had 2 giant sets in there, and they were really hard. The leg session was, I felt that for a few days. The giant set on the back session was probably the hardest back session I've done in a long time, and especially in this 8 weeks. From going from single sets and super sets to everything in that giant set. That was a pretty big session, but felt great afterwards. It was tough, but it was really enjoyable.
I just feel that there's different ways of doing it. If you still want to try and increase that expenditure, we're really looking at, obviously we've got our food, which is pretty nailed on, even with the difficulties we've had, but we're also at a point now where we've still got options if we wanted to throw in cardio, but we don't need to, because I know that the training is going to be enough, really. Depending on where you want to go with it. I know we haven't discussed yet, but in terms of what you want to do at the end of it and things, we might do some stuff.
And what we're talking about there is, things like when you got that deadline, we're talking about things like potential, photo shoots, competitions. If you've got a target like that, then we'll have to just kind of tweak things in a slightly different way for that end result.
Just for that specific day. But at the moment, because we haven't, then we'll just keep going with this week, and then you've still got these options to do things if you want.
And this is the whole thing about consistency. When we haven't changed anything, the program has just been followed as it was set out, and it's just simply the consistency throughout this journey is continuing to get that result, and that's a big thing. What I try to stress about is so important, because you don't need to change things all the time. Changing things is often in my eyes the wrong thing to be doing. You need to stick with something that you're able to do sustainably long term and just keep it consistent.
I think it's all too easy to get to, say, week 2 or even week 1 sometimes, and not see any changes, or not see changes you want, and then to go, right, I need to do this, I need to drop this out, I need to cut down the calories, I need to start doing all the cardio in the world, and then you've got nowhere to go with it, and you just won't carry on with it. So
and it wasn't a question necessarily, but I did have a conversation about this. It was brought up yesterday with a new potential client. He mentioned, if I don't see results within the first week or 2 weeks, I get really demotivated. And I tried to have that conversation about, it was depending on what you've been doing before. Was that the right program? Was that the right structure that you were following? If you weren't getting results within the first couple of weeks, and if you weren't, why were you? Is that a rush to change something? Because what we did, we saw results within the first week or 2 weeks, but even if I didn't, if you've got that plan to follow, be patient, and patience is a huge part of this journey, because some people might not see results within the first 2 weeks, but if you're following a plan to get you where you want to be, just got to be patient with it. And but it is, I appreciate it can be frustrating if you don't see results within the first 2 weeks, but then I'd question what you're actually doing.
And what you're looking at in terms of results. How are you measuring that? Because if you're just measuring that as in, I'll get on the scales every morning, then there's a million other ways to measure.
And we can see that with the fluctuation in weight. It can fluctuate for so many different reasons. There are other ways to measure, which is a really good point.
Weight fluctuations, just in general, in terms of like a handful of reasons, just off the top of my head, but in terms of the water you've been drinking, your intake, time of day, bowel movements, if it's your female, like time in a month type of thing, and that all has considerations.
Stress.
So you can't just go on one of the measurements, which is why we could have changed things earlier, but I'm really wary of changing things anywhere between 4 weeks anyway. So
and I'm really happy the way things are going. So we also don't want to see too quick a drop in measurements. No matter what you're measuring in, you don't want to see it drop too quickly. If it does, there's
It's also, I think, key to get feedback from you as well. I'm quite conscious of that. If there was feedback coming from you where you were saying, well, I'm really struggling here, I'm struggling, I know that some of the sessions are hard and I expect
but they're hard sessions.
Yeah, but if you're finding it constantly a struggle and you are feeling lethargic and you can't really, for the rest of the day you're not doing anything, then that's a point for me, so we'd have to address that, but it's not really come to that, and so we just keep things sort of ticking along really. Feel alright?
Feel really good. As I say, just had when I've been resting is such a huge part of this as well. You know, I've been taking time to rest and chill out and recover, and the recovery is a huge part, not only with nutrition but rest and sleep as well. So sleeping's been really good, I've been getting adequate rest, and that's a big part for me. It's a massive part of, you know, the journey really. You need adequate rest and adequate sleep to be able to recover from the training sessions, as well as the nutrition being a big part of that as well.
Yeah. So I've not changed anything with the food until we decide what we're going to do. We might touch on something there and just change some stuff, but other than that, we're going to keep it the same.
I think we will do in terms of just experimenting, but it's not going to be necessarily for anything specific like a photo shoot or anything. It might be, but we'll see how we get on. But we might just in terms of experimenting. So we'll get all that documented for all you guys as well.
Cool. And the pictures from this week I'll put up as well with some of the measurements as well, I think.
Yeah.
And then we'll do like the final ones next week. Put them together. Yeah.
Be good.
Any questions this week? I did have one actually. Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
It was on. I'll just write a post on it actually. It won't be finished till maybe the weekend. But it was on. Should you always, or is it necessarily always key to track your intake?
No.
That's my initial answer is, my initial answer is yes, depending on what you're doing. If you have a goal and it's specific and you're not tracking, then in my eyes you're kind of guessing. So for that reason, yes, but no, it's not always necessary, because you can just be mindful with your food and try and be a little bit mindful with your choices, and you can still get results. But if you've got a specific thing in mind, then personally I feel you need to be a little bit more conscious of tracking.
In my opinion, it's not necessary, but the majority of people who we work with and the majority of people in my eyes who I talk to aren't aware of their intake. So, and they come and complain that they're not where they want to be, and they're not happy that the position that they're in. So my answer there is learn, understand your intake, track your intake. It doesn't have to be forever, but you just need to have a good awareness of what foods you're consuming on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a fortnightly basis. And then from then, you don't have to always track it. You just get a better idea of what's going in, so that you'll have an idea going forward of the nutrients that you're consuming.
Yeah, it helps you understand food more and what types of foods are and what they contain. So that way you don't have to track all the time, all year.
Yeah.
But I do believe if you have a certain goal in mind, that accuracy is kind of needed.
It is, otherwise it's guessing. You're guessing the result, and the worst thing is that I've seen in the past is, I wrote a little piece on this a little while back, is, not complaining at the fact that you don't be disappointed that you don't get the result, be disappointed in the fact that you didn't follow the process. And that's related to this whole tracking intake. If you've got a specific goal in mind and you're not tracking your food intake to try and get you where you want to be, and you don't get there, you can't be disappointed at the fact that you didn't get the result. You've got to be disappointed at the fact that you don't understand what's going in. It's the process. Understanding the process is the most important thing.
Yeah, that was a question I had, but I'm writing something on it. It's a bit more detailed about. But that's pretty much it. Unless you've got anything else you want to add.
I think that's it. I'm just really excited to do week 8 as well.
So I'm excited for the pictures.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So, cool.
Good. Thanks, guys.